Now we are about to begin the second round of tributes, and I'd like to call forward Tom Hazlett, who will be the moderator for this section. Tom, among his many, I asked him how I should introduce him because he got typical of this crowd, too many credentials to go forward with. But I thought it was very noteworthy that the first credential that Tom mentioned was that he was affiliated with CITI and did some of his brilliant work here. Tom, as you will see, has a great sense of humor as well as a great intellect. He is not only a prolific scholarly writer, but he writes regularly for general public audience with an appreciatedly libertarian perspective, may I say. And Tom, while you're getting set up, let me remind folks that we have, as a special gift from Ellie and CITI, copies of the latest book, number 38, which conveniently arrived from the publisher today. No exaggeration. So it is literally hot off the presses, and please help yourself to a copy outside, and maybe you can get Ellie to autograph it.
Martha, you go ahead and introduce yourself. Hello there.
I'm off the program, so apologies to Nadine and Ellie for crashing this lineup of speakers. But it was something I wanted to say when I was in the panel, and it really is just four things. The first thing is that you all heard that Ellie is a Renaissance man. And this is not exaggeration. This is an incredibly difficult thing to do. I am a political economist that has political science, communications, law, etc. It's super hard to break into that field. Why? Because our academia is very siloed. So the fact that Ellie was able to do it, that's point number one. So kudos to you, Ellie. Number two, humbleness. And let me tell you how I met Kelly. So I am not a daughter of Kelly because I didn't come to Columbia. I did not come to CITI. I met him at a conference. But when I entered TPRC as a young scholar, Ellie was already a legend, right? So I knew about Ellie, and I will tremble every time Ellie was in podium. And it's after this academic conference, there's this kind of drinks thing, and I'm asking for a glass of wine, and Ellie comes over and obviously asks for a glass of wine. And he turns around to me and says, "Hi, I'm Ellie." I said, "I know." I know. So you can see how welcoming and down to earth he was. Third, people wondered, how in the hell does he get to write that many books? I know how he does it. And I know that because I had sat right next to him at DPRC, and I kid you not, I thought that he was paying no attention to the panelists or to the panelists. He's literally writing while he's listening to the panel. And you can see him doing that today. And he does that when we are at the CITI webinars. And I see this little window, and you think he's not paying attention. He's taking notes. He's writing the next book. Yeah. That's how you do 38 and plus whatever our number of articles. And the last thing that I want to say is, so I asked him yesterday, in the evening, and he said, "Hey, Ellie, are you an optimist or a pessimist?" "An optimist." And of course, "What are you talking about? Don't you see the world around us kind of falling apart?" I said, "No, anyway, but I know." But this is all to say that even in the middle of the chaos, just to see the optimism and the contributions that he has done day in and day out to this community and to all your children and stepchildren. Thank you.
That was great. Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. I actually just met Ellie about an hour ago. And my name is Tom Hazlett. I'm a professional comedian. You might have seen me. Actually, I've been a comedian for a long time. I wrote a PhD dissertation in economics, and my chairman read it, and he said, quote, "You're a professional comedian," unquote. So I was asked to actually send a tribute video for this ceremony, but the organizers have claimed they can't use it. Apparently Disney owns the copyright. I don't know how it happened. Maybe the video just wasn't up to your standard. But anyway, I'm going to say something to Ellie from my heart or some other organ. And I got to wait just a second here because ChatGPT is writing my comments, so we're printing them out, so I know what I have to say. But I will make one more point. I think, I'd have to thank Bob Pepper for doing such a very sweet, sincere tribute to Ellie, and many of us were right with him all the way on that. And it's true, too. Martha said it as well. Ellie's DNA is all over this room. Let me rephrase that. If this were a Dateline, we'd already have a defendant, okay? So I met Ellie. Have a drink, Ellie. You're going to need a couple. Okay, so I met Ellie in 1989, and it did change my life, still to be determined which way. And he did teach me some things I didn't know about economics and policy, telecommunications. And I have to admit, the best part were the people. Now, this conference he invited me to, I was out on the West, C. Davis, didn't know much about what was going on back here in a wonderful place like Columbia University. So Ellie told me I was going to give a talk at the conference and then write a chapter for the book. There's always a chapter for the book. That's the price of admission so that they can publish 7,225 books per year. And the topic, Ellie, what was the topic? I told you it was going to be rough. When will we have fiber to the home? So you're saying, we're still waiting. But it was a great topic, and it was great in this sense. Ellie gave me the topic, and I could spend my whole career not thinking up one other single topic. That would last forever, just pondering that one. But Ellie had this thing for big ideas and important considerations and lifelong research agendas. Anyway, one of the things that impressed me when I was at this initial conference, there was actually one of the scholars at CITI, which was then called something else. I think they got sued by an actual department on campus for using that other name. But one of the scholars actually showed up at the conference with a broken leg. And I said, would you have a skiing accident? A car crash? And he said, no, Ace. I got into a fight with a bouncer. This was at Columbia University. I tell you that part? Very high level, scholarly, yeah, whatever. And so Bruce actually took me to the bar. Are you going to cut me off now? Oh, sorry, Bruce. Yeah, I don't want to say his name. His name wasn't Bruce. That was a mistake. Took me to the bar where he actually got beaten up by the bouncer a few days later. And he was very friendly with the bouncer for some reason. Anyway, I thought this was my kind of place. I don't know why. But they not only seem to have a different take on life, they published books the size of condominiums. So I took a sabbatical a couple of years later and got to be in New York. And I, to this day, thank God that universities spend money on sabbaticals, because I learned a lot. And I'll just go over a couple of highlights. In 1993, I joined Ellie's merry band of telecommunists on a trip to Tokyo. And Ellie, do you remember this? You insisted on taking us out. We were giving talks there to various regulators and companies, and always in simultaneous translation, which in Japanese takes 7 times as long as your actual speech. So we were always running over. But you insisted on getting us on the train, going out to the countryside. And what did we do? We walked on hot, burning coals. That's why to this day my shoes are still 2 sizes smaller than they used to be. Then, I think it was 1994, the following year, Ellie was just as joyful as a little boy when he got his hands on a shiny new thing called a mobile GPS device. And he immediately grasped the deep social importance of his gadget. He could now fly his small plane without being totally and completely lost. So I knew how dangerous this was. Ellie, with his PhD in economics from Harvard, his JD in law from Harvard, and his MRS from Harvard. She got it. Now we're navigating in low Earth orbit with this handheld GPS device, and you're worried about terrorism. Well, come on. That's just collateral damage. So here's a story that is hotly disputed, but I swear to you it was told to me by one of the partners in the episode. Ellie was flying over a lake in the American Southwest, Arizona or New Mexico, and turns out the GPS at that time did not include detailed state-level data, and that became of interest because the plane was running out of fuel.
That's the cruise, right?
And a plane without fuel or solar panels reduces to something akin to a glider. Anyway, Ellie, with a certain passenger, and I won't give you the name, Bruce, proceeded to argue about whether the optimal policy right now was to put the plane down on the lake below, landing in water, in an aircraft not made for it specifically, or to keep flying, probabilistically hoping to find a landing site. So apparently they kept flying. And indeed, you see them sitting here, they found an abandoned airstrip. This is the part they both agreed to. And Ellie put the plane down with some trouble, given that there were deep mud deposits on this so-called runway. Okay, but the good part was they lived. The bad part was they were stuck in the middle of nowhere, didn't know what to do, and their plane was out of gas. And, for good measure, stuck in the mud. So they plotted their next move. As luck would have it, they explored a little bit, and there was a Jeep parked at the airstrip, and it was abandoned, except for keys left in the ignition. Yes, it's a bad movie plot, but this happened. So that's practically an invitation, an attractive nuisance. And Professor Ellie Noam, the one we're feting tonight, is a great scholar. Stole is such a strong liberating word. Borrowed. Stole, borrowed. What do you want to say? The car. God, you hope it was a bait car, don't you? Anyway, he drove it to the nearest town and got gas and came back to the abandoned airstrip where the sheriff was waiting. We don't have the video. I know that is a tragedy of millennial forces. But anyway, they somehow talked their way out of this, got gas, and then there was taking off, and there was all this near-death experience with that. At one point, the FAA actually did get involved. But it turned out well. Well, so there really is life-changing work at CITI, and it's not all crazy. A lot of it is very important. The diversity of opinion, the interdisciplinary work, and the passion for big ideas, I think, has made it what it is. And, it's not all walking on burning coals, but there is some of that as well. In fact, I think Ellie's the only person, the only writer to ever drop a footnote. Just think about this. He dropped a footnote into a Financial Times op-ed. An actual footnote. If you're reading that op-ed, there's a footnote. Anyway. I wouldn't say you drop your subscription, but you would. What the? Is this a newspaper or what? Anyway, CT radar did teach me to trust, but verify. Here we are 30, almost 4 years later, and I verified, and I still love you, Ellie. Bob told me to say that. So I have a prize, and here's my prize. After a long career, sometimes you get a gold watch. Forget that. You're going to get something better. And it's stuff you're going to love.
I hope it's fun now.
And it's a Marks-a-Lot. A felt tip pen.
Thank you.
This implement holds a special place in Ellie's life, his passion, and his career. So many times, speeding to a seminar in the good old days, Ellie would be drawing up his, what are they called? Who's under 30? What's C's? What's C? Is there somebody under 30 who can tell me what these are? Transparency. Yeah, he's not under 30. I know you can't, because yesterday in Clemson, South Carolina, I asked 3 undergraduates to get me some transparency. I had to do it myself. And by the way, I had to go to the basement to find these. Right here, we have 6 of the 8 remaining transparencies in Western civilization, Ellie. I've got a Marks-a-Lot. And those were the worst transparencies anybody drew, because you were in a moving car racing to the venue to get that talk done. But somehow it all came out brilliant. And I'd like to toast. We got toast? Ellie Noam and the amazing Nadine Strawson. I propose an old Scottish toast. Stick a feather in a festive place. Cheers. Now we have the real people. And needing no introduction. And I was told, oh, we got it?
Hello, my name is Vint Cerf. I'm Vice President and Chief Internet Evangelist at Google, but for purposes of this brief intervention, I'm a friend of Ellie Noam's. And I'm here virtually anyway to wish him well on his retirement, a word which I don't think he understands, and to be honest, neither do I. So who is this Ellie Noam guy? Well, I have to admit to you, I've learned a few things that I did not know, and you could accuse me of failing to use Google properly, but I didn't realize that he had served in the Israeli Air Force and that he fought in the Six-Day War in 1967 and in the October War in 1973. Yep, no wonder he's such a tough old buzzard. I would not have understood that until I had a look at his CV. Speaking of which, it's 41 pages long. And so I'm not going to try to summarize anything. But it is astonishing. I mean, there are 38 books and just endless numbers of papers and seminars and other interventions and conferences and everything. Ellie is a productive engine. And my guess is that that's not going to stop despite his official retirement. But I want to thank you, Ellie, for being such a perceptive and determined analyst of what technology is doing to our society and our economy. You have not been afraid to confront issues that others might steer away from. And you've been very reliable in terms of fact gathering and evaluation and analysis of the implications of those facts, for which I think all of us should be very grateful. We need people with clear vision and who are unafraid of analyzing and confronting some of the side effects of the new technologies that are being developed. I mean, at the time that the internet was being developed, way back in 1973, Bob Kahn and I, although we had our aspirations and we had a sense for the technical capacity of the system, I'm sure that he would agree with me that we didn't know what all the implications would be of its spread across at least 2/3 of the world's population. It has had enormous economic and social impact. It continues to have that impact. And of course, the systems that are built on top of it have also had dramatic impact, especially with the current crop of artificial intelligence implementations, as Ellie will tell you in his most recent book. So it's this clear vision and willingness to tackle both scale, scope, and variety that has made Ellie's contribution so important. And it's important that we recognize that in this retirement dinner. So Ellie, I want to once again say thank you, not only for your willingness to put in prodigious labor to gather facts and to evaluate them and organize them and help us understand what their implications are over such a broad range of topics. I mean, look, if I have this list: telecom, wireless spectrum, radar, auctions, TV, cable TV, video, internet, broadband, books, libraries, film, semiconductors, consumer electronics, metaverses, cryptocurrencies, and digital finance, and artificial intelligence. And that's just the beginning. It's just enormous scope, for which I say we are very grateful that you put so much effort into helping us understand what the implications of these technologies might be. And perhaps more important, as you articulated some of the problematic aspects of these things, you reminded us, first of all, that there might be things to do to diminish negative side effects, and you never lost hope. At least as I read it, you were always ready to say these are powerful technologies and there are good things that we can do with them. And you encouraged us and others who read your books and attended your seminars and participated in your classes to think in those more constructive ways rather than simply beating the doom drum. And so for that, we are also very grateful. So I wish I could be there with you in person to enjoy an opportunity once again to listen to what Ellie has to say and meet with his friends and welcome him in this next chapter of his already extremely productive life. But here I am, virtual Vint. So I wish you all a wonderful evening, and I look forward to catching up with Ellie when the opportunity arises. Meanwhile, see you on the net.
Johannes Bauer, he comes up here, right? Because they also rejected your video, apparently. So come on up, Johannes. You all know Johannes, and he's a tremendous scholar and a friend of ours. And anyway, let him have it. Don't be too nice.
It's difficult to follow up all these toasts. And I just wanted to actually go a little bit more intellectual and emphasize one piece of work that Ellie has done that I don't think we've appreciated sufficiently today. We had a lot of discussion on what happens in different parts of the world and which model is better and which one works better and works worse. And what has always impressed me about Ellie's work is his cunning capability to, first of all, collect myriads of details about telecommunications, television, whatever it might be, in many places of the world. His volumes on telecommunications in Europe, television in Europe, telecommunication in the Pacific, in the Middle East, in Africa, in South America, they're legendary works. And you have to really study them. In addition to the enormous detail for every country chapter, there's also incredible analysis pulling a lot of the longer-term trends and developments together in ways that are very unique and very difficult to have. And so one of the stories that emerges from this is that there's actually no really best model that works all the time. It's almost like in Peter Pan, where sometimes the kids win, sometimes the others win. I've been around long enough to remember people talking about the Fortress Europe in 1992. Well, right now, this country looks more like a fortress rather than Europe. We have talked about Europe being ahead with broadband investment. Now Europe is envious of the United States about its investment volume. You could go on. And what really happens here is that we're learning from each other. And I think the intelligence that is needed to analyze the data and to interpret the data in a meaningful way, that is something that is really embedded in your books. And I really encourage you, if you haven't read those, go back to them and study them, because they are as relevant today as they were then, and they will remain relevant going forward. So Ellie, thank you for the present to the global body of knowledge and to the scholarly community.
Thanks, Johannes. And I don't think this has been announced yet, but Ellie's 39th book will be out next month. 1,279 pages. Video streaming in Greenland. And the White House has ordered 70,000 copies. I just heard that from the grapevine. So we now have greetings from an eminent business executive whose importance in the telecommunications sector is well known universally. And in fact, as CEO of Verizon, he has been actively involved in CITI over the years and a chair of the board here. And we have some well wishes from him.
Ivan Seidenberg, sorry, I didn't say.
Hello, everyone. This is Ivan Seidenberg. For those of you who don't know me, I started in the telecommunications industry in 1966 at the New York Telephone Company, spent a dozen years at AT&T, then moved to the Regional Bell Operating Company, and eventually was part of the creation of Verizon in 2001. So I first met Ellie when he was the commissioner at the New York Public Service Commission in the 70s. At the time, I was in middle management at AT&T, responsible for covering the federal agencies in Washington, and we happened to meet at an industry conference somewhere in the 1976 to 78 timeframe. Ellie, of course, had the reputation of being an extraordinarily tough regulator, very well versed in telecom. He brought an academic perspective to his work. And when I met him, the first thing that was noticeable to me was that he was curious and he asked me a lot of questions. I loved it. The idea that we had a regulator who was tough, but also wanted to know the cause and effect and all the policy implications of things that were going on was extraordinarily powerful in my mind. Ellie left the Public Service Commission, of course, went back to Columbia, established CITI, and therein lies some of his life's work. I've stayed in touch with Ellie over the years, have been active with him at CITI on different conferences and different programs, and he has taken this core belief that he has about understanding telecom policy to an extreme and to the extent that all of us have benefited from his work. Now, of course, we all know that Ellie is extraordinarily detailed, and he sees things that some of us don't see. And of course, he has written 20 books, of which most of them I don't understand. But I do believe that they have produced platforms for all of us to create, I think, great conversations and great collaboration. One of the great things about CITI, the institution, is that Ellie created a body that became a convening organization, as well as an organization that brought together academics and regulators and politicians and industry people all around the idea of figuring out how might we collaborate in developing better policy over the years. And CITI has been extraordinarily successful in doing all of that. So as you celebrate Ellie today, it's really a story of a man, Ellie, and of an institution. And both of them have made extraordinary contributions to our industry. As I look back on my career, and particularly now, after being retired for 15 years, it is easy to see the groundwork that's been laid by all the work that Ellie has done and all the work at CITI that have created, I think, the conversations and the knowledge and the platforms that enable all of us to move forward. Ellie has been spectacular in his notion of making sure that we all evolve. We evolve with the industry, we evolve with the issues, and we stay current, and we keep talking, and we keep collaborating going forward. So Ellie, congratulations to you, congratulations to CITI, and here's wishing you and Nadine continued success in your life's journey, and have much happiness, great health, and continue to be as productive as you always have been in the past. And for all of you out there, thank you for taking the time to celebrate this remarkable person and this remarkable institution. And enjoy your time, and thank you very much for having me participate through this video. Thank you very much.
So this is a little bit of the diversity of the platform that Ellie put together at CT, and has been so rich and rewarding. Here you've got the chief of a major incumbent, so-called incumbent local exchange operator, and one of the great players in the CT what came from the upstart telecompetitor sector. Robert Atkinson was out in the real world doing real competitive things, and then he decided to hook up with Ellie and CITI, and has had a long career managing operations there. And somehow he got away with submitting his video and doing this, so he's going to smile while he watches. The nice things, I think they're nice things, right? You're not griping about a paycheck that didn't come or anything. Okay.
Hello, I'm Bob Atkinson. I was the Director of Policy Research at CITI from 2000 to 2012 after having spent a few decades in the telecommunications industry and then a couple of years at the FCC. What I want to talk about is not academics, but Ellie's tenure as a commissioner at the New York Public Service Commission from 1987 to 1990, a time when local telecom competition blossomed. I was heavily engaged in the development of local competition as a senior public policy executive at Teleport Communications Group. I think it is fair to say that Ellie was the intellectual leader of the policy revolution to substitute competition for monopoly in local telecommunications services. That revolution culminated in the Telecommunications Act of 1996 in the U.S. and in similar policy changes around the world. A quick story to illustrate my point. As a PSC commissioner, Ellie's job was to prevent utility monopolies from exploiting consumers and to encourage the monopolies to improve their services. Ellie knew that competition could do both of those things. So one day, Ellie called me into his Manhattan office and asked me a simple question. Will Teleport contribute to a universal service fund? The idea was that the fund would protect telephone consumers if the evil cream skimmers, like Teleport, captured much of the lucrative business services market that supposedly subsidized consumers and high-cost rural areas. I personally disagreed with the whole cream skimming argument, but I could see that Ellie was in absolutely no mood for a debate. He simply wanted an answer. So I said, of course, happy to contribute, no problem. And once Ellie was assured that consumers wouldn't be adversely affected by local competition, he pushed the New York Public Service Commission to allow it. And soon public utility commissioners all over the country, and eventually the FCC, followed New York's lead. For a time, state regulators in Massachusetts, Illinois, Washington State, and Texas were actually competing with Ellie and the New York PSC to see who could open up the local markets to competition the fastest. Looking back, I see Ellie's simple question as illustrative of his vision and his willingness to push a sensible competition policy. And that policy became a foundation for the low-cost, high-performance fiber optic infrastructure that, in turn, enabled the internet revolution. Small sparks can indeed start great fires. CITI and Ellie made a great practical difference for the better. Everyone associated with Ellie and CITI over the years should be proud of all they accomplished. I am. Thank you.
That's very nice. Erik Bohlin is not just a man about town, he's a man about the world. He has appointments at Ivey University in Canada and Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. He's the editor of Telecommunications Policy. He is very active in our academic field, and he has a few things to say.
Yes, it's a great pleasure and then privilege to say a few words here to Ellie. And first, I just wanted to recollect my first memories of listening to Ellie and being, for instance, at the TPRC conference in 1990, where there was a very big session, but the room was absolutely quiet. And that was the listening to him because his words came in not unexpected, but in a kind of a tense sensation of you couldn't figure out where he was really landing. So it was a tense feeling of listening, intense listening in the whole crowd. And that has happened so many times when I enjoyed his presentations, that his remarkable intelligence simply exudes in these moments. And I've had the privilege to invite him for some other conferences, and the same things has always happened, that he brings new perspectives. And I greatly admire his capacity to recreate himself and to persist for all these years and being this productive. So it's my great pleasure to just say thank you, Ellie. Thank you for all of this. Thank you.
Thank you for putting up with us, Ellie. Nadine, thank you. And I'd like to thank ChatGPT.